Welcome to the Lion's Den, where we will equip, encourage, and challenge you to live boldly and walk faithfully. I'm Bradley. This is Cooper. And today we're going to talk about our testimonies. One thing that we didn't even talk about actually before rolling that we should touch on as far as this being our inaugural first episode is how did we meet? Because I think like for a lot of people, they want to know like what's the connection, like who are you and I, and what's our relationship as well.
For sure. So we're siblings. No. We actually just met recently, which is really cool. But we actually used my wife and I and our little guy. We have a little son named Crew, who's just about 2 years old. We just moved here to Phoenix, Arizona, and literally took a job at Christ Church of the Valley as a pastor here. And Brad was coming to the church, and we got to kind of just randomly run into them in one of our services. And I remember my wife and I were like, hey, one of the things we really want to do here, again, part of this kind of Christian living, is build a great community of people that we can surround ourselves with to be able to help us through whatever we're going through in life. And we just happened to run into them in a service one night. And we're like, hey, you guys want to start a neighborhood group with us? Didn't even really know them very well at all. And I
talked to you for 10 minutes. And then I get a phone call, like later that night, and you're like, hey, I know you mentioned you were thinking about joining a group. We should start one together,
Persistence is key sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually, funny enough, right when I called you that day too, you were actually extremely injured as well, but you committed to doing the podcast because that's where you're back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was going through it.
But hey, it was great. We started this neighborhood group, and it's been super fun. And then kind of got talking about what can we do to continue to impact people in a positive way, to continue to share the gospel message and help people in the best way possible. And then Brad actually was the one that had ideas for the podcast, which was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it for quite a while as far as wanting to start a podcast. And like initially, and obviously we've talked about this before, but initially it was like from like a work perspective of I'm a real estate agent, and so from a work perspective of maybe giving people advice about investing in real estate and things like that. And then also sharing, a little bit more of like my story through that and connecting with people and just creating community through that as well too. But it just felt like totally self-serving, to do something like that, and that being my heart posture going into it. So I actually, recorded an entire episode by myself of something like this, and I never posted it because I just didn't have the desire to. It just felt like, again, it's completely self-serving. And then, we were just chatting about, something like that. We joked about it in a group chat.
Seriously.
and then you said in all caps, dude, I would love to start a podcast. And I was like, okay, I should. Let's do it then.
Which is sweet. I mean, and it's so great to be able to just be able to chat and go through things. I think the reason why I was so excited, even the text message, is just, sometimes it's just great to be able to just process through things and talk and be able to share experiences. And I think sometimes the best way that we ever learn is literally just be able to share, what are things you've gone through? What are things you faced? How did you navigate this challenge? And really, I think doing it through this type of a setting in a podcast with just very authentic, real, genuine conversations. It's the best way to kind of navigate through things. Not saying, obviously we have all the answers to everything,
right?
But I think just through conversation, you usually get a lot of clarity and wisdom through just talking things out.
Yeah.
Have somebody to talk with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think just like you said, sharing stories with each other and obviously like we're all going through this life and being Christians and navigating, life in a world that's obviously not everything is glorifying Christianity. And so what that looks like and like the challenges that we face and just break down like, hey, like I read this in scripture today. Like, is this something that like, I feel like God was putting on my heart that I was thinking that this was meaning to me. Like, how do you feel about that? Or, hey, like I this happened over the weekend and this is kind of how I navigated it, and this is something that I struggle with, like, and just talking through those things, like you said. And I think there's a lot of wisdom that could be provided just through breaking it down in front of, an audience as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the podcast is going to be super fun because we're going to basically touch on, obviously, a lot of different topics, a lot of different things that hopefully, resonate with people that are watching or listening and be able to just, kind of attack those things from the perspective of, hey, we're just going to, these are things we've dealt with, or these are things that we have questions about. Might be even just like, having conversation, unpacking some of that stuff in a real live way, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, our whole mission is just to be authentic, and obviously, we don't have all the answers 100%, only God does. But yeah, I mean, we just live our authentic life and break things down and in real time, and hopefully, our audience gets to know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So testimony. So we wanted to, for the first episode, break down, our testimony as far as just where we came from, what led us to, where we're at today and in our faith and all that good stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Do you want me to start with my story?
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. My story is, it's fun. We definitely are on a adventure right now, as I kind of mentioned, just moving here to Phoenix. But prior to that, we actually lived in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which some of you may know, some of you may not. But a lot of people know where Banff is because it's a really beautiful place. Yeah. And so we were like an hour away from Banff is basically where Calgary is. So really cool spot. Very cold though, and I'm not a huge winter guy, so this was a nice switch up for me. But yeah, for the kind of past 10 years, I've been in a pastoral ministry role there as well at a church called the Royal Oak Victory Church. So shout out to ROVC, which is great. But prior to that, I didn't actually grow up necessarily in the church, so I started my faith journey in a family that was super loving, super caring, and had Christian morals and definitely Christian things that were instilled. But once I kind of got into middle school through high school, we weren't attending church at all. We weren't really, living out that faith. And I wasn't really being necessarily having those characteristics instilled. I definitely wasn't living out a lifestyle that would be something that was people would notice and say, "Hey, this guy's following Jesus." Right. And so, went through high school. Athletics was really my big focus throughout all of school. Played basketball and football all throughout high school. And then was fortunate enough after high school to get a scholarship to play basketball at the University of Calgary. And so went there, which was super fun. But again, still not really living out my faith. Definitely living up the range for sure. But made some amazing connections with some awesome people while I was there. And I met this one guy. His name was actually Max, and he really started talking to me about faith, which was really cool. And this is why I think
who was Matt? What was his relationship to you at the time?
Yeah, so he played on the team. So he was a little bit older. He played on the team. I think he's 2 years older than I am. Okay. I was playing on the team and was involved in a lot of the university like church things. And we had like U Church, which is like a university church. I'm sure there's lots of campuses have something similar. Cooler. Yeah. And he was involved with that, and he just kind of started talking to me about faith. And I saw just the way he lived his life, and people would always go up to Matt all the time and be like, "Why are you so happy, man? Like, why are you so excited? Why are you, loving life all the time?" And he would always point it back to just his relationship with Jesus. Yeah. So it was super intriguing to me because I was definitely living a life that, from the worldly perspective, people would be like, "But you shouldn't be happy all the time. You're partying, you're drinking, you're doing all those things." But yet it still felt like I don't really have the fullness of life that this guy has who isn't really doing all those things. So it was like, what am I missing? Like, what was going on? And so he kind of talked to me a little bit about faith and what that looked like. And I got curious and got a little bit more intrigued by the whole thing. And then, he took me to a conference. It was called Campus Harvest, where they come to like different campuses and preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. And it was actually at that thing that I accepted Jesus in my life. And
so you're kind of already thinking about it a little bit up to that point. And then that was like, was it kind of like an altar call, like salvation kind of thing where they're like, raise your hand if you want to share your life to God.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I still remember it so vividly because I went and a bunch of the guys from the team came. And so like they did this salvation call. They're like, stand up if you want to accept Jesus in your life. I remember looking around being like, I'm a freshman. I will embarrass myself in front of all these people. Yeah. I cannot stand up. Like I was like, there's no way I can stand up right now. And I just felt the strongest like tug in my spirit from God just saying like, "Hey, like this is your chance. Like accept it, stand up." Yeah. I remember I just like launched up, stood up, and didn't really care what else had to think.
What was the response from your teammates from that?
A lot of them were super supportive. Like a lot of them were really great about it. Even ones that weren't like Christians or weren't like kind of stepping into their faith, they were just like happy for me. Yeah. They're like, "Hey man, like this."
So isn't that funny? Is like you have this like constant like, it's like you really want to dive into this like head first. And because like it happened to me too, where it was like I felt like the pull from God for a while, but it was like you're just so worried about what everybody else is going to think. But in reality, everybody just wants the best for you, even if they're not Christians themselves. You want to be a supportive friend. So they're like, cool, man. Yeah, good for you.
And I wonder how many people too, like that's the case for them, that like they have those moments where they feel that tug, but then they don't do anything about it because of like what they think people will experience around them. And I mean, there's no more relationship that's like more personal than your relationship with God. And so like that, like individual relationship that you have with God and that relationship with Jesus is such a personal thing that really it shouldn't matter what anybody thinks. But obviously it's very easy to fall into that. Or that's where I was. I fell into it and I was just like, finally like, I'm just going to stand up.
Yeah.
Make this kind of public declaration. And so, yeah, did that, which is great. And then kind of never looked back from there. It was really interesting. And right away at that conference, somebody that was part of the organizational team, one of the pastors, actually gave me a book, and it was talking about like a call to full-time ministry.
Oh,
and I was like, what in the world? Like,
because that's pretty shortly after you.
It was literally the same day. Like, I was like, while I was at the conference, and I was like, this is nuts. So I was like, okay, I just accept Jesus. Like, I'm still focused on playing basketball.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to do this. This was what I wanted to do, even for a living, to play professionally afterwards.
And did you even know too much about the word, at that point at all?
No. Like I was
how could be somebody that's preaching, right?
Yeah. And so for me, it took me really off guard. But it's funny, I still have that book now. They kept it. And obviously they knew what they were saying because that's what I ended up doing.
Totally.
But at the time, I was like, this is crazy. Like, why would you give me this book? But it was cool. It definitely like stirred something in my heart to basically say, like, at least ask the question. I said, like, hey, God, is this something you want for my life? I know, obviously, super new to my faith. And maybe timing's not now,
right?
But is this something that you want? And that actually was what helped unfold kind of the next parts of my kind of story, which was I kept playing basketball. But in my second year of playing, I actually was in a practice. I still remember it was like 6 a.m. practice. No one wants to do super early, and normally in those early morning practices, it's just like when your body's just like not warmed up yet, you're just kind of getting started, and so. I was feeling kind of lethargic. We're out on the court, and one of our guys came and like set a screen on me, and I went to go get around it, and my arm kind of got like tangled up with him. And so I remember I was like, okay, well, I just like pulled away to try and get like my arm up, and my arm didn't like move. So I pulled away, and my shoulder just dislocated. And it literally, I remember I looked down, and my shoulder was like down here.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And so I literally was, well, this is now a huge problem.
Yeah.
I ended up going to the doctor, and I basically walked into the hospital. They did like the x-rays and everything on it. And they basically looked at me and said, it looks like you got a car accident. Like that's how bad you've damaged your shoulder. And so they said like your labrum's completely torn and your rotator cuff's completely torn. So they said it's happening in practice. Yeah. Just from that like little thing of practice.
Not even in a game.
Yeah. Which is the worst. Yeah. I said, not the game, but practice.
Yeah.
But seriously. And then so I end up, they send me to like a orthopedic surgeon, and they're like, yeah, we got to go in and do surgery on this thing. And they had to put 5 anchors basically in my shoulder socket to hold my shoulder in place because of the damage that it caused. And so obviously coming back from that, wasn't able to play at the same level. I wasn't able to do the same things. Some of that probably was a mental thing. I heard that was probably physical. Right. And I remember it was at that moment where I was like probably at one of my lowest points, because I was like, my whole life up until that point, my identity was basketball.
Right.
And now all of a sudden in an instant, it's gone.
Right.
And I was like, what in the world do I do with myself?
Yeah.
And I remember wrestling with that, of just saying like, oh my goodness, how do you live life now when it's like everything you've known feels like it was just taken away in a moment? And luckily it was at that time where I really would just started leaning into my faith, and God opened so many doors. And right at that same time, our church back home started a summer internship program. And they asked me if I'd be interested in doing the summer internship. And the job was basically to start and run a young adults program. And so I was like, seems kind of fun. I was a young adult at the time. So I'm like, I just get to hang out with my friends. Seems like a great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did that, and then kind of worked my way up in ministry. I just never left. I fell in love with serving, fell in love with like the church, the young adults group, by God's grace, luckily did well.
Yeah.
And so God was blessing it. And so they looked at me and said, hey, you want to come on full time because we need to keep this young adults going.
Right.
And I was like, well, Sure.
So was your major while you're in school in ministry? Like, did you switch your major at all or anything like that?
Yeah, no. So I graduated from school with a civil engineering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's what I was taking with civil engineering.
Yeah, I actually didn't even know that.
Yeah. So not even anything to do with ministry. So I actually took civil engineering, and while I was doing the internship, I actually worked also at a home builder, and it was an estimator and then like a site superintendent for a little while working in a builder. And some advice I can give to people that was not a good move, but it ended up working out. Because at that time, I was working for the home builder. My wife and I had just gotten married. We're 3 months into our marriage. I remember I sat down with her and I said, I was making decent money at the home builder. Like things were good. They had a really good trajectory for me to continue to grow in my workplace. And I remember looking at her, I was like, I don't feel fulfilled in what I'm doing. And she was like, what do you mean? She's like, this way. And so I literally told her, I was like, I'm not going back. And so I quit my job. 3 months into us getting married. We just moved into our like first house and had no income and had nowhere to go. Like I didn't have any plan. I didn't really have much in place. It was I think honestly, 30 days later, I got a call from our church. And then that's when they were like, we didn't bring it full time.
Wow.
Yeah. And the guy just like opened that.
Yes. Yeah. And so that kind of ties back into like just like taking that extra step, right? Of stepping out in your faith, even though you feel like, your friends are going to judge you for it. But the reality is you're not in control, right? Like God is in control, and that's what God wants you to do. He's going to open up a door for you, and he's going to make sure you're taken care of. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And definitely felt uncertain making that move. Like it definitely was not so we were like, oh yeah, this is it. We got it all sorted.
Right.
I remember there was a lot of conversations with my wife and I were like, what are we going to do? Like we still have bills to pay. We still have a mortgage. We got to do these things. Amazing wife. My wife Chastity is awesome. And she, just supported me through it. And it's like, well, we'll figure it out.
So, because I know you mentioned that you didn't grow up in a Christian family, but I know your wife, Chastity, did. When did you met her pretty early on though, right?
Yeah, so we started dating when I was in grade 12, so it would have been 2012.
Gotcha.
So we've been together for however long that is. That was 12 till now, so 13 years.
Yeah, 13 years. Yeah. And so she came up from a pretty heavy faith background, and so did you have was that like good exposure for you as well too? At the time to bring you to Christianity as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Her family was amazing. So her mom actually worked at the church that I was part of previously.
Oh, and
I was involved in the ministry there. And her parents, like growing up, it was so interesting. I would go over to her house when we first started dating, and they would always have like family dinner together. And I would always pray before they had dinner. And all these things were super foreign to me. I was like, this is like very odd. And we didn't really eat family dinners just sitting together, let alone, praying and doing all this, like kind of, it was a big deal to them. Like family dinner time was kind of a cherished time.
Right.
And so I learned so much from them and from their family, and the way they like loved me and welcomed me in, it was unbelievable. And so, they definitely modeled the love of Christ in the way that they treated me and a lot of things early on, which definitely made a huge impact in my faith journey for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So then after that, literally full-time ministry, worked for 10 years in that church. Again, started in that young adults role, moved up into an associate role or I was a teaching role. So I would teach once a month in our Sunday services, preaching from our stage, and then kind of oversaw our youth and young adults ministries. And that was kind of my last role in Canada. Mm-hmm. Until we did the big job.
Yeah. Which this is a huge part of your testimony because it's like also a crazy thing that you've done.
Yeah, we've done some crazy things. I feel like, one thing you will learn about me as we go through this podcast is I am very much a like all in adventurous, like let's do it type of guy. I just think that like, man, it gives so much space for God to show up in those moments when I feel out of control. It's like the greatest thing because it kind of feels like, God, I need you to show up.
Like Carrie Underwood said, Jesus, take the wheel.
It's exactly it. It's exactly it. I've done that many times in my life. And and I think it's cool because it just is those moments where you kind of live open-handed of saying like, God, like I'm not going to hang on to anything too tight because if you want to take something from me, you can take it. But then it also allows for if you want to give me something, I'm ready to receive it. And so I try and do that as much as possible. Not easy. And it's definitely and sometimes I'll be a little too adventurous and God is like, hey, maybe you need to go fall on your face and then you can figure it out later. Coming here was a crazy scenario. Obviously was in that role, really doing well, loved what I was doing. But really was starting to feel kind of a tug of like, maybe there's something different for me to do. We had some conversations with our lead pastor there about options within the church that I was a part of, whether that be, stepping into, a lead pastor role down the road there or whatever that looked like. There was different options that we were kind of discussing. And I remember my wife and I, we said, okay, well, we need to just go and we need to pray about it and figure out what the Lord is leading us to. And so one of the coolest things we ever did was we went and rented a hotel room for 2 nights. And we locked ourselves in the hotel for 2 days straight and just prayed and said, God, what are you telling us? Is it to stay in the role that I'm in and kind of continue down that path of like whatever the next promotion may look like, whether it be lead pastor, whether it be whatever it may be down the road? If that's that what you're leading us to, reveal that to us, or are you leading us to do something else? And if that's something else, reveal it to us. And so what we did is we bought 2 different colors of like sticky notes, and the 2 days we were locked in there, we just prayed and prayed and prayed. And anytime we felt like I was leading us in something, we just wrote it down. If it was to stay, we said, write it in this color. If it was to go, we said, write it in this color.
Why did you decide to get a hotel room for this? I was curious.
Yeah, I think for us, the biggest thing was we just wanted to quiet the noise as much as possible. So when we were kind of navigating through a lot of this, there was a lot of people that just loved us a lot. And so they really wanted to help us kind of in this decision.
Yeah.
And we all know what that can be like, or it's, again, out of the greatest of intentions in the world. But people just want to tell you what they think you should do in these areas. And I think for us, we just got to a point where there was so much noise that it felt like, how are we going to hear God when there's all of this noise going on?
Right.
And so for us, we were like, okay, let's go away to a hotel where we can kind of detach, we can get away. We did leave our son at home with his grandparents.
And noise there.
It's a lot of noise. And so we just went away where we could just kind of eliminate that, quiet everything. Because I think oftentimes in my life, at least, the times where I've missed God speaking is the times when it's just too loud. There's just too much going on. There's too much noise. So that's what we did. Yeah, the hotel room. We prayed for 2 days straight. And when we got to the end of the 2 days, I didn't have pictures of it, but the walls were basically filled with these sticky notes. It was pretty cool. But when we looked at them, it was quite shocking because it was like, well, a lot of them were kind of saying to not, take the role within ROVC, but to, look at the other options that are out there, which really shocked us because we would have thought, hey, we could stay there forever. Things would be fine.
Right.
We're good. And so we end up getting to the end of that. We're kind of shocked by it. So my wife and I kind of looked at each other. We said, okay, well, what's the one thing you'll really feel like that is standing out to us the most? And it was unbelievable. Kind of both of us at the exact same time said, I feel like God's saying, I want you to learn, which was the hardest thing I ever had to hear, because I was like, nobody wants to hear they have to learn more. Right. Everybody's like, no, I got to figure it out. I don't want to learn anything.
Totally.
And so hearing I need you to learn more was very difficult. But we said, hey, ultimately we have to be obedient to God's calling on our life if we expect to, have success in what we're doing. And so we came on vacation here to Phoenix right after that, just because, again, wanted to get away, get a break.
Right.
Wasn't connected to anything. We just came down on vacation. And normally when we go on vacation, my wife and I don't normally attend the church on Sunday because I'm normally always working in church every Sunday.
Right. So
it's kind of like our kind of one weekend to get away.
Vacation.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we normally don't do that, but we were like, something was like, we should go check church out. We never get to go to another church. And so we're like, let's go look. So we looked it up, found CTV, which was here, a larger church in this area. And we went and checked it out and ended up meeting one of their pastors there. He mentioned to us, he was like, hey, just ran into us at the campus. Like, what do you guys do for a living? It looks like you guys are new. And we're like, oh, we're pastors back in Canada.
Yeah.
And he mentioned to us, he's like, hey, have you ever considered anything else or doing something different? It's like crazy. And you mentioned that to me because kind of wrestling through this thing right now, what to do next.
Right.
And so I ended up applying for that job. And by God's grace, went through a lot of process.
So when you were making the decision of moving down here, you actually didn't have a job lined up yet down here?
No. So when we first came to visit here, just to do our vacation, we didn't have any plans, nothing of coming down here. It was literally just purely a vacation. Once we applied for that job, then that's what fueled us to
right.
Actually.
Yeah. So taking the role that you were looking at taking, though, you didn't have the CCV role already lined up, or was this when you came down, you had the role lined up?
Once I got here, the role was already, So once
you were doing the sticky notes in the hotel room,
that we had nothing at that point.
Oh, so you didn't have this role with CCV already lined up?
No.
Oh, see, I always thought you did. No, I just thought you had that. Like, it was like, these are your two options, right?
Yeah.
But you was just take the promotion essentially at your previous church,
Right.
or not.
Right.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is obedience to God.
It was nuts. Yeah. We didn't have anything we were walking into. No, like there wasn't like a job offer on the table that we were deciding between. It was literally like, you have something concrete and you have something that like your spirit's telling you should maybe consider.
Right.
And we went with what our spirit was telling us to consider.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because like, I guess, I mean, looking back because obviously you shared this story with me before, like it still sounds crazy of just not taking that job and moving down here,
For sure.
but you had like two options, right? Like it was like, this could also, it was a new opportunity. It was something completely different. So I could see, based on your personality type of what you mentioned, of just like,
For sure.
doing something crazy, is I can see you doing that. But then but to hear that actually it wasn't that, it was just like, hey, he'll call it to not take this promotion. But then now you felt, oh, this is because this was the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the door opened for CCB afterwards. Yeah. So when we were in that hotel room, there was nothing yet concrete. We had talked about like potentially coming into like to another church and looking at other options, but didn't have a job offer or anything at that point. So
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So we ended up, obviously it ended up working out. We got the job here.
Yeah.
And moved our family to Phoenix. We didn't have any family, no friends, nothing.
Yeah.
We had our house we owned back in Canada. We had a car paid off, all these things. Things were all set up. We came here. It was like, we had nothing. We literally had to rent. We didn't even have credit history, which we found out along the road, which is a fun fact. If anybody's wanting to move from Canada to the US, your credit does not follow you.
Right.
Fun fact that is very important to know.
I'm assuming you didn't know that, according to
we didn't. No, we're not. We didn't know all the rules completely.
Yeah.
But it's fine. But again, God created a way, and we, we're here. We're enjoying it. We're learning. We're growing. We obviously met you guys.
Yeah.
And your amazing wife, and our neighborhood group has been such a blessing to us. And we get to do this podcast and things. And so again, God's opened a immense amount of doors, and given me opportunity to just continue to do my ministry. And really my whole goal is furthering his kingdom, to be able to bring more people to know him. I love nothing more than seeing other people succeed. I know some people hear that and they're like, what do you mean you don't want to succeed yourself?
Right.
I tell you, it's literally the craziest thing in the world. But for me, like the thing that I thrive on is seeing other people succeed and just helping encourage people to believe in themselves beyond what they could do on their own. And that for me is a win within ministry, within my life. So that's me in a nutshell. What I'm passionate about, testimony, how I end up here. Yeah, all of that. So the stage is yours.
Yeah. It's a tough act to follow. No, I love what you said about impacting others to succeed, because I've always felt the same way. And I've always felt like, man, am I wasting my time with like some stuff like because of that, like in real estate, like I mentioned, I wanted to start a podcast just to help other people learn about investing and things like that. And because I just think about, when I was younger, if I would have known some of the stuff that I know now, or had somebody that took me under my wing, because a lot of I'll talk about this in my testimony, of course, but a lot of the things that where I've gotten to in life have been by the grace of God, 100%, but all by my own research and doing. I didn't have anybody that, was like, hey, like this would be the right decision in this move. I would just make the mistake. Right. And they're like, okay, that's not the right decision. I got to do something else, So I just kind of stumbled my way into where I am now. So
I love hard knocks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I definitely align with you in that, of just like, if I could impact others and ultimately, since fully committing my life to God, impacting others to doing the same, because it is like this peace and joy and happiness, like what you experienced with your friend Matt, you said. I'm like, I want everybody else to experience this too, because I experienced all the same, things that you thought gave you peace and joy and happiness in life, but they don't give it to you forever. It's like in a very temporary setting. And this is something where you just feel better all the time, So yeah, just want other people to experience that. But so yeah, my testimony. So I guess where do I start? So I grew up kind of probably similar to you, of a Christian home, but not necessarily like faith wasn't like for the forefront.
Right.
I mean, my mom was like pretty outspoken about God, but it was like, hey, you should believe in God because I said so and because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like, there's no why, so it was like, I didn't know anything about the Bible or anything. And then I started playing, and kind of like you, sports were like my everything when I was a kid. So I started playing football for basically the Pop Warner team. And Pop Warner, for those of you who don't know, is like youth football.
Yeah.
The team that fed into this Christian high school. So and it was like the idea was to cultivate and make the football team better for the Christian high school because the football team is really bad at it. And so because I was in that area and where that high school is, I just ended up playing for that team. And so I was with all these kids that went to this Christian high school or went to this Christian middle school that, led into high school. And so it was great exposure for our family because my mom would talk to the other parents on the sideline. They talked to them about, going to Valley Christian was the name of the school. And then so ultimately I ended up transferring there from public school in 8th grade. And so got obviously a ton of exposure to Christianity at that time. And I think like probably, what was it, junior year, I really was like, started to take my faith a lot more seriously at that time. And that's when I committed my life to God. I remember it was kind of similar to your story where I was at church and it was like this intense worship scenario. And like, everybody was like, their hands up and it was like, if you want to commit your life to Christ right now, like just like take a step forward, because we were all standing up because it was at youth group.
Oh, okay.
And so I stepped forward and so like I had the youth pastor at the time prayed over me and stuff. It was really cool. But as one does, I wouldn't say fell away. Well, actually, no, I would say fell away because there was a time like I ended up transferring from my junior year to my senior year back to public school. Ended up really like partying a lot and like just like I still went to Young Life. If you're familiar with Young Life,
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you mentioned about like the university.
Oh, similar.
Thing. So it's like I still did that, but I wasn't going to church on Sunday, like because my family wasn't going to church. It just wasn't like the priority for me, but I was still kind of trying to be around, Christian friends as much as I could, but while also still trying to be drinking and partying on the weekends.
Right.
So
I lived in the two worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Very lukewarm, I guess.
Yeah.
But and then so go to college. I ended up. So there's a huge gap between actually like that time, like senior year of high school, where I'm still kind of influenced by or still like thinking about being a Christian, but then I kind of just like pulled away and just like thought I could control my life myself. Like I just thought like, hey, like, and I grew up very, for lack of a better term, like poor. I would say they're the poorest, but it's definitely other people that grew up in tougher scenarios than I did because I had two parents that loved me, which was awesome. But we didn't make very much money. My parents made like $20,000 a year, and so I was like, all I could think about was, okay, I'm good at football, and this is what's going to get me out of this situation that I'm in because finances was the number one stress in my family's life. It was like always the fight. It was always the argument. My parents would I was very involved in like my parents' financial decisions, like from like a very young age. I know like some parents, which this probably sounds more healthy, but some parents like don't involve their kids of like anything financial,
For sure.
which is probably the way it should be. But like, I'm like, I don't know, like you guys should invest your money here, and stuff like that. And they listen to me. Which is crazy. So, but I'm like 16, telling my parents like I'm
Financial advisor.
yeah, just good stuff to manage their money, which is crazy. So anyway, so just thinking, okay, but I wasn't very good in school and I was really good at sports. And so football was like, that's how I was going to make it out. I was going to be, you see all the stories, buy my parents a new car, make millions of dollars. And so that's just like, football was my idol 100%. Like, and so I went and I very briefly played JUCO football for this team in Everett, Washington. And I was I said, like, they sold me on a dream. I was essentially homeless, like, when I was playing there. I think I told you about this before.
His stories, yeah, is unreal. Your meal plan is my favorite story.
Yes. So again, I was living on my own. My parents obviously don't have the means to financially support me. They're giving me $200 a month. Imagine $200 a month. Like, I can't even make $200 last a day.
Right.
but yeah, $200 a month. And so they sold me on this dream where, like, they're like, oh, just play a year here. You'll go to any school you want to after that. Like, you'll get all the offers and everything. And it was just like, essentially just to get my grades up and then go play somewhere else. And because I did do very well in high school opening grades. So I go there and it's me and 4 other dudes, all from different parts of the country, as far away as Florida. One other guy, though, with me that we did go to high school together. So we came to the school together. We were sleeping. We rented a room from this random guy that pretty sure was guilt drugs out of his house. And we couldn't use the kitchen. Like, he wouldn't let us because we weren't paying enough rent to use the kitchen. So we would, the only car we had was my beat up, I think it was like a 2003 Saturn. And like the hood was like crunched like this because I rear-ended somebody that didn't have the money to fix it. And so we were just whipping around in this beat up Saturn. But a lot of times we had to walk because I couldn't pay for gas.
Right.
And so we'd walk to McDonald's. And I'm going to football practice every day. They're telling me I'm the best football player that they've essentially ever seen. Like, they're gassing me up.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, I go to McDonald's and I'll buy 2 McChickens. It was, at the time, it was 2 for $1, good old days. And I would save one to eat, or I'd eat one for dinner.
Yeah.
And then I'd put the other one, because I couldn't use a fridge either. I'd put the other windowsill of this room. And then I eat that for breakfast the next day. And then I go to football practice the next day. And they're like, yeah, you're such a great football player. I'm like, I'm not going to be in 3 months when I'm nourish. Yeah. And so I'm just like struggling. And they're telling me these things. So I'm like, okay, if I'm as good a football player as you think I am, I'm just going to leave and go walk on to a D1 school, right? And so I did that. I went to University of Montana, walked on, made the team, but I ended up getting kicked off the team for my grades. So this whole, like, football was like everything, but at this point, I've just been so, like, getting beat down from it.
Right.
And then at that point, I was like, my mom got sick. She had cancer. And so I moved back home, be closer to her. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to join the military. And honestly, like, the idea was to help pay for school, because my whole idea was like, football was going to get me a scholarship, which was going to pay for my education. So that was not an opportunity anymore. Then I'm going to join the military, and then that's going to pay for school, which will give me my education. And when the military didn't go back to school, so I ended up selling cars and, like, living at home. And meanwhile, just, like, living completely of the world. Like, this whole time period, I was smoking weed with all these guys that in our homeless situation, and then
bedroom.
Yeah, I have the 1 bedroom. Also, another thing is we didn't even have a bed, and they were going to throw a bed away. And the only reason we had a bed is because I asked if we could have it. Like, the owner, he was throwing a bed away, and I was like, hey, can we have it? Anyway, so it was a struggle from like 18 to 21. I finally, then I'm like, okay. But meanwhile, I'm thinking like, okay, I need to make a lot of money. That's why I need school to work out, because I need a good job, because what's going to bring me peace and security and joy in life is going to be making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And because I experienced not making a lot of money in my whole life growing up.
Right.
And the turmoil that caused in our life. And just like, I didn't have the same opportunities as other kids and all this stuff. Like, and so kind of money ended up becoming my idol in a sense, because of that. And so, I get a sales job where I'm like, okay, I can control my destiny with, like, how much money I can make, right? Like, selling cars, which is not, you can't make a lot of money. and so I do that, for a while, and it's still completely living of the world, and then I get this job that I thought was a career move for me. That was like it was a sales development rep for a tech company. I was the only person at this company that got hired without a degree, and and uh, and then I'm like struggling at this job. I don't know why. I think I do know why, is because my mom was very sick. That whole, like, I only worked there for 6 months, but that whole 6 months, that was the last 6 months of my mom's life. So it was like just going through all of that was really, really tough. And looking back, like, you look back, you're like, oh, you think in the moment like you're totally fine and no big deal. But looking back, I'm like, no, that like was really hard to go through, and like I emotionally was completely off. And so my mom ends up passing away from cancer, and I get fired from that job 3 weeks later. And so, yeah, you want to talk about rock bottom. But what's crazy about that, though, that it is like it didn't even take me. It take me hitting rock bottom to come back to like fully give it all up to God. Yeah, because I felt like, I mean, honestly, it kind of felt like I just stayed at rock bottom my whole life, So it was like, it was kind of like something that was like, well, it wasn't like, oh, I have nothing left, let me turn to God. It was like, okay, I can crawl myself out of this myself, and then so that happens. End up moving to Seattle and just had like the opportunity to just like, I guess, kind of like reinvent myself, find out what's true, find out what's not. Because at this time, like after my mom passed away, I completely turned back. I said, like, why would God do this? Why would my mom was a Christian? She was a good person. Why would God, allow her to suffer and pass away? And so I just kind of subscribed to that belief for a while. And then I like to play basketball, as you know, playing once a week. and so I play basketball with this guy who's a pastor, younger guy. And he just kind of like, after we were done playing, just started asking me some questions. And he's like, well, and I kind of challenged him with, why would God do this? Why would God, have me go through these horrible situations if he loved me, right? And he kind of just like challenged me with the answers to those questions of, obviously, like with, sin and all that stuff. And it was kind of stuff I already knew because I grew up in it, But I don't know, he kind of gave it to me from like a different perspective. And he challenged me to read The Case for Christ. Lee Strobel. Yeah, Lee Strobel. And that led me down to like a whole path of like, I don't know, it just opened me up to it again. And God like pulled on my heart at that time. And like, I was probably like 24, maybe 23 at that time. And I was researching, okay, like there's no way based on archaeological evidence that this is not, or that this is not true, right? This is absolutely true. And, but then I started also getting into like manifestation and like, law of attraction. And like, cause again, money was I didn't have any money. So I was like, I need to make money because that's going to be what brings me these things that are ultimately the fruits of the spirit. Right. And so like, meditating and like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so I start doing those things, but, a couple, and then I get into real estate. Meanwhile, I'm like in the military, I was part-time as the National Guard. So I was doing 1 weekend a month, for a while. And then I took a full-time position, in the National Guard. So this was my full-time job, and I trained guys to get ready for basic training, basically. And then the HR kind of side of that, like managing them on your books as well too. But I had that job, and it was like, again, it was good. It was comfortable, but it wasn't like something that I thought was like an actual career move for me that was going to be where get me to where I want to go. So I got into real estate, had a lot of success in real estate immediately. I sold 23 houses in my first year, and it was awesome, and I started getting down kind of this road. I had some really bad mentors at the time, that also idolized money, right, as well. And so that was kind of like my example, and so they're partying in the clubs and, dropping, $5,000 on a table at the clubs and like things like that. So I kind of got into all of that. And then I never dropped $5,000. I wasn't that.
Just to clarify.
I wasn't that. I was, yeah. But it was interesting because I feel like it was God totally revealed to me, because meanwhile, I believed in God. If you'd asked me at the time, I'd have told you I was a Christian. But looking back, obviously, I was living my life like very lukewarm. And God revealed to me, though, I think like it was the greatest blessing, because He revealed to me the example of like the worst example of like, if you keep going down this path, this could be you. And this was a guy who was making millions of dollars in real estate. He was, anything like I dreamed of, for like years past. It was like he had the car, he had the nice clothes, he had all the things, but I could just see like, okay, and so it almost seeing him, and then I saw like a completely like worse side of him, because it was kind of subtle at first.
Okay.
And then it was like revealed to me through like in a time where we went out like one weekend, and it was just like, it was actually on a trip here, a vacation here. And it was just like the worst side of him I've ever seen. And it almost turned me off completely to like the idea of like wanting to be anything like that. So I was almost like, I need to run opposite direction. And it led me to, honestly, I think probably that in that I started going to church a lot more and taking my faith a lot more seriously at that time. But it was just kind of like subtle, and then I just felt like God pulling on our hearts at that time. And even at the moment, even though I would still consider myself like even lukewarm as I'm still going to church more, I could still feel God pulling me to Arizona. And so we left his team. So after all this stuff happened, left his team, had the best year I've ever had in real estate following that. We were the top team at our brokerage in 2023. And then we just said, peace out, we're moving to Arizona.
I resonate with these types of decisions.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we were pretty similar in that sense. Yeah, so we just said, see you later. We're going to, even though, we stayed in Seattle, we would be very comfortable, having probably an amazing real estate business there. But we just felt like God was putting on our hearts to move to Arizona. And from the moment we moved to Arizona, end of 2023, it was like just pulling ourselves from Seattle. It was just like almost that like reinvention of ourselves again. Because I had that kind of like really big moment of moving from Spokane to Seattle, was like, okay, you can reinvent yourself and be truly who you want to be for yourself. And then it kind of felt like moving here, it was like, you can be who God wants you to be.
That's good.
And so like I started taking my faith a lot more seriously, even more. It's like gradual, yeah. And then, but moving here, I got to take a step back and remove myself from all of the comparison of the sales in Seattle, and feeling like I need to be the best, in every situation and win awards in real estate and things like that. And I got to remove myself completely from any of that and just realize that none of it matters. And the only thing that matters is your relationship with God. And so it almost took me like actually like hitting the goals that I set out for myself to realize that it doesn't matter, versus like, I feel like some people, or most people, they have to hit rock bottom to be like, okay, I can't live this life without God. I need God, which I think is a huge blessing, because I think I can see things from both perspectives for a lot of people. But yeah, so we started coming to CCV. We were going to a previous church before that, but it was like we had some reservations about it. And so I had a friend invite us to CCV. And then we went to a different campus, which is the campus that you work at now. And this random lady tells us, like, we're like, hey, is there a young married group that we could be a part of? Right. Through this church. She goes, no, but I feel called. I don't know who you are or anything about you, but I feel called to tell you that you should start. And so we're like, okay. But I like almost started crying in a moment because I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. Because it was something that we were already thinking about as well too. Because we just bet to one other one before that, and we thought about like, oh, maybe we could do this, ourselves, like a little bit better, And then this lady told us that, and then 4 few months later, like we meet, and then we were able to kind of connect on the neighborhood group and stuff. And but yeah, I think. I mean, this really within the past year, though, is like when I kind of started going all in on my relationship with Jesus, or I guess since we moved out here,
Right.
to where it was like before I was very much taking my faith seriously, my relationship with Jesus seriously, but also I had the idol of my career in my life, and then I just gave that up to God and God took that away from me, and I don't have that idol anymore. And now the only thing that matters is my relationship with Jesus. And I can honestly say that my life is 100 times better since then. And it's not like my career has suffered because of that, right?
Right. I was going to ask that because, even though you basically release the reins of that, like kind of that idol of like earning money and like these types of things, it doesn't mean you've stopped earning money and
Right.
a good career.
100%. Yeah. But now I don't have the like stress and like constant anxiety about like, I need to hit these goals. I need to do these things. Otherwise, like I'm worthless. Right? But I just wanted to back up to talk a little bit more about within the last year. I mean, like I said, moving here is we stepped into who God wanted myself and I think Anna to be. But one thing that was a really huge eye opener for us in the last year is, despite us, being what we would consider ourselves Christian and saved previous to that, but we had kind of this eye opening moment in this last year of like thinking about, hey, any of our friends, asked us about our faith and said, "Are you a Christian?" They would never know that we were Christians. And my wife Anna had this moment where um, she came home from a trip one day and she starts crying, and she was like all somber and everything, and she starts crying. And she's like saying to me, she's like, "Our friends would never know that we're Christians, but yet we're in the Word every day. We're reading the Bible, but we're not living that out with how we're carrying ourselves." And this happened like about a year ago, and and so we kind of like made a decision from that moment on to really just start being more bold in our faith. And and I think it kind of led us down a path of sobriety as well too, to where we completely stopped drinking. And not that there's anything wrong with drinking alcohol, because it doesn't say that, it doesn't say to not drink at all. Obviously in the Bible, there's nothing wrong with it, but we just felt like we felt called to just really set like an example and just publicly show, that we are living our lives differently than what the norm is, but we still like to have fun. We still hang out with our friends. We have a lot of friends that aren't necessarily Christians like we are and everything, but we still are in these circles. But yeah, we're just not drinking, and we've also found that like we have just as much fun not drinking, and we found that like you kind of you think and you believe and you tell yourself this story when you're drinking. You're like, oh, I need to drink to have fun. But I think, one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control, right? And if like, why would you let alcohol have this power over you to be that's what makes you fun? Just be fun. Just have fun. And if you're not having fun, you probably should be doing something different.
Right.
It's like, if you're in a situation where you're like, the only way you can have fun in this situation is by drinking, then that's not a situation you should be in. Sure. Like at a nightclub. Imagine being at a nightclub sober.
There's no reason to be there at all.
yeah, exactly. It was just, that sounds horrible. But so yeah, it led us down this journey of sobriety. recently was baptized, of course, by you, which is awesome. And not that, I was baptized as a kid. Um, and I truly believe I was saved, in high school, but obviously, kind of strayed from that path a little bit, and then ultimately came back to God. But I felt like just a pull in my heart that, and I felt actually, uh, when I first started going to CCV, is I felt like I just saw this vision in my mind of, like, I don't know why, but like somebody asked me about getting baptized, and it's something I never even thought about because I was baptized as a kid, right? So it was just like, and I was a Christian, it wasn't like a thing that I felt like I needed to do, but I just saw this vision in my head of like getting baptized in front of like all of my friends, and I was like, okay, like sure. I'll do it, like what's it gonna hurt?
Just gotta be sure.
Yeah, exactly. I already knew, I was living faithfully and everything. Um, so I did, and all my friends came, and it was amazing. This happened, within the last 6 months. Last like 3 or 4 months, actually. Yeah, not long ago. Uh, and just because I just felt called that I wanted to, just show like, hey, this is like, I'm taking this seriously, and you can be somebody that's, normal, like not like a Bible thumping person that's like legalistic, like how kind of the environment that I grew up in. Like, so like you could still be somebody that's fun to be around. I mean, I hopefully that if people think I'm fun to be around anyway, and still be a believer and still be a Christian. And but I think really what started that like whole like journey of I guess sanctification for me, and God putting these convictions on my heart to really like live a lot more boldly in my faith, was just being in the Word. Like, because before I'd consider myself a Christian, that for this extended period of time, but I was not in the Word. I didn't start reading the Word as often as I do now until like really a year ago. And I was on a trip back home, and I was around other friends that they used to be partying and drinking and stuff all the time. And I did that with them, of course. And I come home, and like God was already all kind of tugging on my heart, like to be leaning into my relationship with him already a little bit more at that point. And then we go and hang out with them, and they are like on fire for Jesus. Like they're like, yeah, dude, I don't drink anymore. And they were way worse drinkers than I was even. And they're like, I don't drink anymore. Like I have this like crazy, scenario where, I've just decided to 100% live my life like for God. And I was like, wow, that's super inspiring. And so they were, like I said, they were in the Word like so much more, and inspired me to read my Bible a lot more. And then like you just read the Bible. And I was telling the kids at youth group this actually yesterday, is like, if you're not reading the Bible, like read it. Like it's black and white. It tells you exactly what you should be doing and how to live your life. And if you're not living your life that way, who are you aiming to please? Are you aiming to please yourself, or are you aiming to please God? And my motivation is aim to please God. And so I was like, okay, drunkenness, like should be doing that. Like, this is how I should be living. I should be not people pleasing, all these things. And I'm like, okay, I need to be all in, and this needs to be God put these convictions on my heart, and I want to be obedient in that. And it says the Bible is, the prayer of a righteous man is, how does it go? The prayer of
A righteous man, something much. Oh my goodness, prayer of a righteous man.
is like, you can come to God without doubt,
Yes.
because if you're living a righteous life, it's like God will answer your prayers.
Right.
And also, of course, if your prayers are aligning with his will, and that honoring God in that.
Yeah, I remember this. It's like right on the tip of my tongue too.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Prayer of a righteous man is like avails much or something. It's like something about like,
Yeah.
But that is really interesting. And with what you're saying too, obviously, like, yeah, we kind of hear like these stories, which is so cool to hear the transformation, different things like that. But even you talking about like, stopping drinking, and then also using like your baptism as a light to those people around you.
Right.
Sometimes that can also be like you can see some huge transformation that happens in those around you, but you can also sometimes see people be like, I don't know how I feel about this. How did that like navigate with you and your friend group about like, were there some that were like, this is awesome, I love this? And were there others that were like, I don't know if I'm fully, on board with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just something that like, some of our friends just kind of avoid the topic, or don't really discuss it, too much. Like it, and the not drinking thing is kind of the perfect opportunity to kind of like open that door a little bit and just see how it's received from them. Because I'm not like beating around the bush. I'm saying like, hey, I don't drink anymore. When I was just drinking and partying with these people, for the year before that, I said I'm not drinking anymore because God put it on my heart to stop drinking. And like that conversation could go one of two ways from there. So it's like they either say, oh, interesting. Anyways, like
Yeah.
just move past it, or they're like, oh, really? And then they start asking me like a little bit more questions. So it is kind of like an opportunity to kind of, just like share with them the joy that I feel from God and like how powerful it is of like the fulfillment that you get from being a Christian and seeking a relationship with Jesus, of how that is so powerful that it made me stop living the lifestyle that I was living before, which seemed on the outside probably to most people that our lifestyle was awesome, like doing what we want, drinking on the weekends, partying, but like it's just like so nothing compares as far as like the fulfillment that you get from just being in the Word and seeking a relationship with Christ.
For sure. You never really know. Like sometimes we never get to see the fruit of the seeds that are planted in our life.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's what's really neat too, is like, even maybe, for those that are listening or whatever, they're kind of thinking that same thing of like, oh, I'm going to lose some friends, or I'm going to, have to navigate through what that looks like. Sometimes those seeds that are planted take years.
Right.
And then all of a sudden somebody comes back to you. I know I've had that in my life where somebody comes back to me that's like, hey man, like when I saw you do this, now I understand why.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
That's really cool. And so I think standing on those like convictions and like being firm on like saying, hey, like, I'm making this decision for me. It's not about anybody else around me. It's
right.
a relationship with me and God. It can have an impact beyond what you ever see. It's kind of like that ripple effect of, you throw it in the water and you never know how far that's really going to go.
Totally.
So it's really cool to hear that's kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it doesn't, if it even if it didn't, plant a seed for these people, I obviously pray for them and would absolutely love for them to, be on this journey with me. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. And I mean, we're not here and we're not called to judge, non-believers by any means. And so, but to be light, like you just said, just to be a good example for them and show them and share with them the joy of the Lord that we experience, So yeah, I mean, this last year, had been a huge shift as far as just really stepping into our faith and being bold in that and just not being ashamed of it by any means. And now the only thing I used to care so much about like what I wanted, which was what the world wants for everybody, as far as like especially in the United States, definition of success, just like money, houses, whatever, like all that stuff. I like, okay, if I do all these things, then that's going to be, I'm going to be looked at by my peers as successful. And that's all I want, right? Yeah. Versus now I'm like, the only thing I care about is what God's will is for my life. And like, if I'm doing that, and if that looks like something completely different where I have to completely shift everything, then I will, because I no longer care about the validation that I seek, that I sought from all of these previous things of like I said, the worldly definition of success. Like I define success in my own life based on my relationship with Christ and how in alignment I am with His will. And there's nothing I like pray for more than being just in step with Him and doing what His will is for me. Versus before it was like transactional prayers where it was like, God, please let me sell this next house. And then I'll follow you a little closer, if I just see that it's answered, which is totally not. That's like prosperity gospel kind of stuff. Right? It's totally not how it goes. So, but yeah. Anyway, so that's led me down to where I'm at now.
Which is pretty cool because if you think about it, really what kind of like changes, this is what I like. I know for me personally was one of the greatest kind of things was I'm not a huge video game guy. But I remember when I was younger, I used to love playing video games against like my little like cousins and nephews and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was going to win.
Right.
So it's like, it was the best feeling. It's like, I know I'm going to like dominate them.
Yeah.
And it was great. I was like, I'm going to win these games. So I loved playing it because I knew I was going to win. That's almost what changes when you like change your lifestyle in the way that you did with Jesus. Is like you go from a place of like chasing something that you're never actually going to win at,
right,
to now all of a sudden playing a game that you've already won,
right,
because the victory is already ours in Jesus. Totally. And now you live from a place of victory and you get to just like literally live life a whole different way.
And it's such a freeing feeling where it's like, you don't know, like in life, if you're going to win or lose. You always have that uncertainty, right? Like versus like, if you know, like you are truly, like we just talked about, like walking without conviction and pursuing a righteous life, like God is on your side. Like if you've God on your side, like,
you're not losing.
You're not losing. God runs everything. So there's it's just it is absolutely freeing because you're just like, hey, I know if this doesn't work out, maybe that wasn't the path that God wanted for me, and something is going to work out tenfold. So yeah. I will say, just like we've been pursuing a lot more as far as like volunteering our time with the church and everything. And we always had a little bit of like in the back of our minds, like a little worry about, oh, is this going to take away from our business? And I feel like business is coming so much easier now, where people just like come out of the woodwork and they're like, yeah, I want to buy a house. And I'm like, oh, I haven't heard from you in 2 months, but sure, I'll sell you one. So yeah, I feel like God has just like blessed us. It's like, hey, you're giving time to like, give back. Like everything else is a little easier versus like maybe like before, not maybe before, definitely before we were like, everything was always just kind of like fighting tooth and nail for a lot of things versus it just like, if you're just walking in God's path, it's like nothing can stop you, which is awesome.
It's so sweet. Yeah. Cause you can accomplish so much more even in a shorter period of time with God's blessing than you can in a longer period without it.
Yeah.
And so like, even when you're giving your time to the church and to these different things, you would think it's like, I don't have as much time, like these areas are going to suffer.
Right.
And ultimately God shows up in such a beautiful way that you actually have more success in those areas. I mean, it's honestly, it kind of ties into even like a Sabbath day. So a lot of people are like, I can't Sabbath because I just don't have the time. Maybe that'll be something we talk about later in one of these episodes, but about Sabbath rest. But like, a lot of people are like, I can't do that. I don't have enough time. And I'm 100% can tell you from my life as somebody that loves like high pace, go.
Yeah.
I can accomplish more in 6 days with God's blessing than 7 without it. And 1 day of Sabbath rest changes things dramatically. And so I'd much rather live in that and just trust that God's going to show up for the difference there.
Totally. I always think about like things like that, right? It's like God is so big. Like, I feel like a lot of times we put God in a box of like, and thinking that's like giving the reins to God, right? Like if releasing everything to him, and he's so big, he's going to take care of you. Right. And like, for me personally, it's like, no, I got to do this. Like, I need to do it. Like, and you're not even thinking about giving it up to God because you don't think that God can help you with it. But like, God absolutely can. And it's like, why put God into a box like that? Because he literally created the universe. And he wants the best for you. And like the whole goal of this life is to grow close to him, and so that you can spend eternity with him. And the eternity with him is happiness. And so you can experience that like while you're here on earth, and God's going to provide paths for you and open doors and everything. Yeah. God is not like, hey, if I just do this one thing, then God will do it. I mean, it's like I said, I can't think of the specific example, but yeah, I just think like all the time we just think about God being too small, and he's just so much bigger than you could even imagine.
For sure. This is opening your mind up to the fact that, like he's a part of everything.
Yeah.
And so
Like if God wanted you to, like, whatever your wildest dreams are, like, and you think it's going to take you 10 years for it to happen, God can make it happen for you today.
yeah,
Like if he wants to,
100%.
you know, but God's not going to do that unless you are walking faithfully for him, you know?
Well, the Bible talks about it. It says, delight yourself in the Lord. He'll give you the desires of your heart.
Yeah.
A lot of people just take the second half of that and they're like, well, I just want the desires of my heart.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the first part is just as important as saying, no, it's as you delight yourself in the Lord, your desire starts to actually change.
Yes.
Because as you align with him, then all of a sudden your alignment and his starts to become like something that's moving in the same direction.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the desires of your heart start to become reality. And so I think, like that's exactly it. I'm just saying, like, if you can just chase after God and everything, you delight yourself in the Lord, all of a sudden you're going to see doors open and opportunities that you never thought possible beyond even what we could think of for ourselves.
Yeah,
Which is cool.
absolutely. I always think about the story about David and him taking over for King Saul and Samuel, telling Saul that he is no longer anointed by God, and that's why David stepped in, right? Because he needed somebody new to be king. And the moment that Saul lost his anointing was when he started taking credit for everything himself, and he believed everything that everybody was saying about everything that he was doing. And Sam was like, "No, God told me that you're taking all the success for yourself." And so God's taking away his anointing from you. And yeah, I think just like staying grounded and staying humble and like in life is just so much easier. Just in general, I feel like whether you're facing hardships or you're facing, successes in life, like when you are walking faithfully with Jesus, like it's so much better. It's so much easier, less pressure. You're like less, uncertainty of outcomes. That God has a path for you, and it sounds crazy to anybody that doesn't.
It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. It doesn't actually experience that themselves, but once you're filled with the Holy Spirit and you're 100%, experiencing that, it's like it's supernatural. Like you can't sort of compare it to the desires of your flesh or what you experience in the world, anything that you'll experience in the world.
Yeah. And even in that story, that's what literally David was doing throughout that time. So Saul's doing the opposite. He's kind of going away. And David was just literally like, I'm just going to sit in the presence of my father. And he was like, it is so interesting seeing that contrast between the two of them. Even kind of funny enough, but even Saul literally, when he tries to kill David, he literally throws a spear at David. And it says in the Bible, David was literally just playing the harp.
Yeah.
Seven is such a hilarious thing. It's what a wild dichotomy of just all of a sudden Saul's losing his mind.
He's going crazy. Saul's literally losing his mind. Yeah. He's paranoid all the time and everything. And it's just playing.
It gives you a good image though of what the difference is. That's a life without God versus a life with. Is that even in the midst of getting a spear thrown at you, it's not like David wasn't experiencing a crazy circumstance,
right?
But in the midst of that, he still is at peace, and it just is a whole different thing. So it's not saying hey, you have a relationship with God, all of your problems go away. It's not saying bad things don't happen, but it's saying that you can still sit in that place of peace, similar to how David did in that moment, which is kind of a cool imagery to.
Yeah, so life is 100% easier. I can tell you based on what I have experienced in my life of attempting to live a life without God, and then also attempting to live a life maybe what I believed was with God, but still not fully devoting myself, is once you're all in and you fully jump and trust that he is in control, it is so much easier. Yeah. His way is so much better than anything that I could do. Yeah. But anyway, so episode 1 in the books of the Lion's Den. We'll see you next time. This was our testimonies today.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
See ya.